kind of people we are deep down? Are we problem-conscious people or power-conscious people? I think our lessons today have a lot to do with those two concepts. Problem-conscious. Goodness knows there are lots of problems in this world, and we face them every day. It is not hard to think of all the things that go wrong. Things that could be part of your finances, things that can be part of your health, things that can be part of the larger world, threats of war globally, all kinds of things with climate change, problems with neighbors. The list can go on and on and on. You haven't even touched not finishing your homework yet or trouble with the boss. It's not easy. And I wonder how many of us have spent some of the wee hours of the morning sleepless, wrestling with our thoughts, anxious, hurting, wondering what's going to happen next with the thing that is consuming us at the time. It is not hard to see ourselves as problem-conscious people. Jacob was a problem-conscious person. In the story that we have today, he had not been to his legacy home for almost 20 years. And when he had left, it was fleeing for his life because his twin brother Esau was trying to kill him because Jacob had tricked him out of the blessing and the legacy. And now God had called Jacob to go back home to the place where God was going to make the next steps in his covenant. And Jacob was nervous. He was going to meet his brother when he hadn't seen for many, many years. And he didn't know about whether his brother was still angry with him. He didn't know if his brother would come with great might and kill him and still have revenge. So Jacob had sent all of his wealth ahead of him. His servants, his camels, his flocks, all of those things, so that in hopes of his brother coming to meet him, he would see that Jacob was a powerful and strong man. And he sent his wives, and his children, and he was alone for that last night on the far side of the river before crossing into territory where he would look to see his brother. He was anxious. He was problem-conscious. And that night he wrestled. The scripture in the Hebrew is a little bit more ambiguous than it is in the English. He was wrestling with some kind of supernatural divine being, according to the words. Some places it looks like an angel. Sometimes it seems like it's the Lord himself. And too many times, we have spent times like that too. Wrestling with God. Why is it like this? How can you help us, God? Why are you not listening to our cries? Why and what? And what are we going to do next? Now, being problem-conscious can get us into problems. I know of a man who loved to play golf. This man loved to play golf so much that at 90 he was still out on the course. And one day he came to his wife and said, I don't want to give up golf, but I just don't know what to do because I hit the ball, I can see it going, but I can't see where it lands. My eyesight isn't so good anymore. And I don't want to give up golf, but I have a big problem. So his wife said, I have an answer to your problem. You take my brother with you on the course. My brother has excellent eyesight. And the man said, yeah, but your brother is 102. But he has excellent eyesight, she said the wife. So, trying to solve his problem, the man took his brother-in-law on the course. He's ready to hit the ball, and he looks at his brother-in-law and says, are you sure you can see this? Oh, of course, I have excellent eyesight, said the brother-in-law. And so the man took a great swing. The ball went high in the air, landed somewhere off near the fairway. And the man, brother-in-law looked and looked and looked, and the man said, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" "Oh, yes, I saw it. Yeah, I have excellent eyesight, you know." Well, then he said, "Well, where did it land?" And the brother-in-law hesitated. "I don't remember." Problems. Too many problems. And with our anxieties, it helps to laugh sometimes about the problems we have. Jacob wrestled face to face with God and hung on until there was a blessing. This divine creature said, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he replied. In Hebrew, it means the trickster, the one who finagles and tries to get things from someone else. And indeed, his past life would have been all of that. And the angel says, "Now your name is going to be Israel, and you will be the father of many nations." Jacob's name was changed. His life was changed. He was given a new affirmation of the plan that God had always had for him. And he moved into that promised land with God's help and with a new life. Now it pays to be persistent. Jacob held on until he finally got the blessing. So when we're problem conscious, it helps to be persistent so we can shift to the other place that is more powerful and more helpful, to be power conscious. When we're power conscious, we look to see where our help can come from. We get our help from God. There's an interesting story in our Gospels today about a strong woman, a persistent woman, a widow who has had many injustices against her. Now, sometimes when we hear stories about strong women, it strikes us like that isn't so often the case. When I was growing up, there were no women in ministry in the Lutheran church. And when I got to be in my late 20s, I finally started seminary, and there were very few who had even dared to go to school. There are strong women who open doors and who shift into new areas of life. I'm reminded of strong women like the women in the movie Hidden Figures. Anybody ever seen that movie? I recommend it highly. Find it on Netflix, on demand, or whatever it is. Hidden Figures. About 3 strong women, Black Americans, who during the time of the space initiatives were working for NASA, and they were first in so many areas. I'm especially thinking of Kathleen Johnson, an astounding mathematician who opened up doors and windows of things that no one else could figure out, so that America could figure out how to get a space rocket into orbit around the world. Strong women who take place. This past week, we saw a play up in Rochester, Miss Holmes. I love mysteries, so it was natural for me. And instead of being about Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson and the old English things that were there, this was about Miss Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Dorothy Watson. And the main characters were played by women. And they still solved crimes, and they still took care of all the things. And of course, just to make matters complete in this play, the one who had committed the crime and done the murder was also a woman. How about that? Strong women to pay attention to. And in this particular story that Jesus tells, this woman is persistent. Persistent to the point of nagging. She is power conscious because there is no one to speak for her. She has to do it herself. And she has the presence of God with her. She goes to the magistrate who doesn't particularly fear God, doesn't care about other people, and he was a long time in even listening to her pleas. But her persistence pays off. And finally, this judge, who really doesn't care about much of anything, says, "Stop bothering me. I'll give you what you want. Just go away." Now, Jesus' point in this lesson is if this unjust judge can get it right and get the justice that this woman deserves and needs, how much more does God give justice and power and aid to the people he loves, to the people he has chosen, to the people that he wants to thrive and grow in this world? We are God's people. We are people of faith who trust in him. And when we put that faith in God, we know that when our cries go to him, God will listen. And the promise is God will quickly send help. He will send help in ways we don't always understand, in ways that we don't always know. But it is always consistent with God's purpose for the coming of the world and for justice and for the new life that he has planned for us. He wonders, Jesus says, in this world, when we cry out for help and we hear nothing, when there is that deafness and that void, when there is no sound, what will be filled in that void? He says, when the Son of Man comes, will there be faith? What will fill that void? It is faith, my friends, and our call to be persistent in our work. One last story. A woman by the name of Susan was a single mom. She had teenagers. She had lots of needs. She was working, and she had lots of responsibilities for her children. And she said, "Lord, I only have time to go to worship on Sundays. I can't give more volunteer time. I don't have any extra money. I don't know what I can do to honor you. I don't know what I can give." And the answer that came to her was God said, "You can pray." Pray. "I can do that," said the woman. And she committed to spending the time of her commute, 45 minutes in the car to her job, in prayer. And she said, "God, you're going to have to help me. Who am I supposed to pray for?" And that day at work, as she was opening up envelopes and taking the accounts receivable for this small company, there was a note attached to a check. The note simply said, "I'm sorry I'm late with my payment, but I have been seriously ill. Signed, Beverly Thompson." Now, this woman, Susan, had no idea who Beverly Thompson was, other than the fact that she purchased goods from this company and that she was been ill. And then suddenly she realized this was the person that God was calling her to pray for. And so she began, day after day, week after week. She kept Beverly Thompson completely in her prayers. "I know how much you love me, God," she would say, "and I want Beverly to know how much you love her too." And the prayers continued week after week, month after month. And Susan did not know much at all about this Beverly Thompson. Then finally she was waiting and hoping and looking and seeing if there could be some response. And Susan decided to dare to write a note to Beverly. So she wrote a note of encouragement. "I know how much God loves me and helps me, and I'm praying that God will help you and defend you and protect you." And over each week she would send another note. But still she heard nothing, and there was no response. And then there was a day in Susan's life when everything seemed to fall apart. The car engine died. She had been out with the flu for a week and lost a week's wages. Everything seemed to be going wrong, and it was not a good day. And then the phone rang. There was a man on the other end of the phone. Hello, this is Bob Thompson. Bob Thompson? Do I know a Bob Thompson? And then she recognized the last name. And Susan said, do I know you? Bob said, no, but I think you know my wife, Beverly. At age 48, she contracted lung cancer. It was not a good thing. And then it was a difficult time. And then the cancer spread to her brain. And she could not respond. And she could not talk. But when my daughter and I were cleaning out her things just this past week, because she died a few weeks ago, we found this bundle of notes tied in a red ribbon. And the notes were all from you. They were from you, Susan. Notes of encouragement about God's loving Beverly and having a new life and being protected. And Bob said, I know that your prayers helped. She had no pain during all of those months of suffering. She was at ease. And just before she died, she asked the chaplain to come with communion and give that new life. She said, I know I'm going home. Susan, you made a difference in a life with your prayers. Now God asks us to be persistent. God can do things beyond our imaginings. Who are you going to pray for? Who are you going to reach out and get connected with God so that God's work continues to be done in this world in powerful ways? We are power-conscious people because God is here on our side, and there is much to do. We pray for people we know. We pray for people we do not know. And we are strong, suffering, and persistent. And so when the Son of Man comes and asks, will there be faith? We can put our hands in the air and say, yes, Lord, we believe. Amen. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for the gift of faith, for the aid that comes in so many ways, that we are so marvel at your wisdom and grace. Grant us the eyes to see and the ears to